Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm going to tell you how to release your players to kill each other. All right. Woo, this is a weird one. The field report and advice column all in one today. All right. So I am running Dungeons and Dragons Eberron. Eberron, it's Obsidian, right? And you will find every single, I'll make a playlist for it. So if you check below, you can see every single player character who's playing in Dungeons & Dragons Eberron Obsidian campaign that I'm running out of my FLGS. It's a 2-hour Lego Dungeons & Dragons game, and it's going into session 6. And it is snowballing, man. The action is heating up fast, right? So I have never done this before, but in this specific, I'm going to be doing something I've never done before in the entirety of my Dungeon Mastering career, and I'm going to start the session by releasing the player killers. Wow, ooh, Freudian slip there, baby. The player characters to kill each other. I've never done this before, but the narrative has brought us here naturally. Okay, now first of all, this game really kind of came out of nowhere. It started with one player, and I told that player, I'm going to run Dungeons and Dragons for you, and you can invite anybody you want to the table, right? And he did, and 2 people showed up on week 1, and 2 more people showed up on week 3, and we shut down all the invites because we literally had a full table, right? So at that point, something really unusual happened. So we just played Eberron, right? And what are the forces in Eberron? Well, the forces in Eberron are the houses, right? So one of the player characters, one of the player characters, Sovereign, is linked to House Tharashk. One of the players, Ragnar, is linked to one of the player characters, Ragnar, is linked to House Kundarak. House Kundarak is a dwarf house. House Tharashk is a human house and a half-orc house, which is really interesting. Wait, no, I could be wrong about that. I'm sorry. I think House Tharashk is simply a human house. No, I think it is half human and half orc, right? So that's not apropos here. Let's keep moving. All right. So 2 of the player characters are actually house nobles, right? One of the player characters is native to the Eldine Reach. The Eldine Reach is the Towering Woods, okay? It's essentially a protected grove. It's a huge, spanning, protective, natural grove protected by shifter farmers and powerful druids, right? And the player characters, Holly and Zilfair is another player character, both are native. They are blood to the Grove of the Guardian Trees in the Elden Reaches, right? And get this, the history of the Elden Reaches is that they seceded from Ondair, right? And so the houses are not very powerful in the Elden Reaches because the houses are very powerful and organized, right? And the Elden Reaches specifically, don't have kings and queens. They don't really have leaders. They have wardens of the woods. That's literally what they call them. And they eschew hierarchical leadership structures, right? And so immediately, I was enjoying the game, and Sovereign, who was from House Tharashk, really caught some serious guff from the Elden Reach people, and I'm like, he gets pampered every time he goes to Sharn. He could take a little guff here, and they don't really like him because he's a noble, and all those nobles from all those noble houses were straight murdering them when the war was going on between Ondair and the Elden Reaches, when the Elden Reaches seceded from Ondair 50 years ago, right? So get this, mystery, and so a mystery, right? And so I had the dwarves of Eberron actually kidnap a green adult dragon from the Elden Reaches, right? And they met the Awakened Pine High Druid Olean, Olean, who is a and this is right from the book, right? Who is a powerful druid, and he's furious that this green dragon has been kidnapped by dwarves in Eberron. So I just went right to the book, and so they started investigating it, and like, well, also there's these broken dwarven hammers here at the scene where they kidnapped this this adult green dragon, who legit had been causing quite a ruckus in the Elden Reach. But still, you don't kidnap creatures from the Elden Reach because they don't play that noise, right? It'd be like if somebody kidnapped your dog, right? Even if your dog was a pit bull that bit people, right? You still got to be pretty torqued about it, right? Like, and this green dragon, he was a pit bull who bit people. You understand what I'm saying? Like, he had dragon who dragoned, right? Like, yeah, don't get it twisted, man. The chromatics are evil, right? So, so we got this situation, and one of the players was, well, okay, we found these dwarven hammers. What symbol they have? And so I didn't even think anything thinking of it. I'm like, well, it's the dwarfs of Eberron. And so I flip it, and I use my D&D canon books at the table, right? Like, and I'm like, oh, well, I know in my head there's only one dwarf house, right? Like, but I don't have it in my head, and so I look it up and I'm like, it's House Kundarak, right? And legit, my Kundarak player, my dwarf Kundarak player, legit wasn't even there that week. And the way I handle player characters, I just sweep them out, right? Because if you're not coming there, I'm not going to give you 1 minute of screen time, And he was on vacation, like he wasn't, he had a very good excuse to not be at the table, like he was on vacation, right? But I had swept him off the board, and I'm like, you will get introduced in the first 5 minutes when you come back, right? I'll make people sit around for 45 minutes before they can play. I'm not Matthew Mercer. Like, come on, that's cruel, right? So basically, at this point, two of the player characters realize a house has done this evil thing against their native home. So Holly and Zilfair have legitimate beef with Ragnar, whose house Kundarak, right? He didn't order this, but it is his house, right? And he's bound to defend them, right? Literally by blood, right? Like, and then Sovereign's sitting there up, and he's been House Thrash, and legit, Ragnar and Sovereign have been thick as thieves because they both noble bros, right? Like they're from different houses, but they both roll, they have a lot of gold, they have a lot of access, they have a lot of influence, right? So they get along really well. And up until this point, it was great because in this world, House Thrash and House Kundarak, these two guys get along really well. They adventure together, and that's a tie that binds those two houses together. And both houses were very happy with you got a house of warding and you have a house of finding, right? Like that was a very simpatico connection, and it's going great, right? Until now, legitimate. I didn't intend it. The player characters didn't intend it. And when the player characters, right, find themselves with each other as the enemy, I'm like, hey, you guys are not doing a good job. I'm putting up enemies in front of you. You need to fight these enemies. Don't fight the people, next to you at the table. But I created this situation. I created it. This is on me, right? We narratively arrived at a very natural, real place where two pairs within the group legit are going to have very good reasons to murder each other, right? Like very good reasons, right? Like to go, like their nations, like the houses are going to go to war with the Elden Reach over this, and the Elden Reach, specifically the Elden Reach, will come, and when they find out what those dwarves are doing with that dragon, it's gonna be on like Donkey Kong, right? And Holly and Zilfair are not going. They've already declared we're down for whatever the Elden Reach is down for, right? And Ragnar is House Kundarak, and Sovereign is House Thrash, right? These are people from different worlds, and it was kumbaya. It was a kumbaya garden until it was contested ground. So that's where we're at now. So I have never done this before, but I'm going to tell you I'm about to do it. I'm going to go and I'll say, listen, you guys have been tremendous at this table. I have, as a dungeon master, allowed the dice to lead us somewhere, and allowed, You have been bringing story ideas, and I have been bringing story ideas, and this story has arrived at a place where your player characters have very legitimate, very real reasons to kill each other. Now, every single one of you has given me your time, and that player character in front of you is your player character, your original content, right? You own it, not me, right? So if you don't want your character to die, tell me that right now, and I'm going to give your character a narrative ending, right? And you and me will give that narrative ending right now here at the table, right? And your player character will be able to walk off safely without being murdered by another player character, right? And then whoever, but if you're down for it, there is a very good chance that player characters are going to die at this table tonight at the hands of other player characters, because the narrative naturally, robustly, the math rocks, me and you brought it about naturally. No one here was being cruel. No one was seeking an enemy from the person that next to them at their table. It happened naturally, and we need to honor where the river of the narrative has taken our dungeon master and player group raft, right? So say the word. If you don't want your player character to have any possibility of dying tonight, I will narratively end your character. You and I will narratively excuse your character, and you will be away from the action. I will literally take you off of Eberron, right? And you get to leave this table with that original content, that character that you created, alive, right? But if you don't do that right now, there's a good chance that you look at the person across the table from you. They may kill you this night. What is your decision, right? That's how you permission every player character at your table to kill each other, right? Respectfully, kindly, and with tolerance, right? Because that's where the narrative has taken it. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. Have you ever dealt with this before? I'd love to hear how you dealt with this. I'd love to hear your humble opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.